how do you see an unwinding happen if the US dollar were to lose its status, and what that would mean for, say, the average American? I mean, what does it look like for America if it isn't the global reserve currency anymore?
So a couple things. One reason actually why China's been slow to catch on with their currency as a global reserve asset is because they're a closed system. And so judging by the size of the economy, they should be, arguably the second biggest currency right now, perhaps the biggest. But because it's a closed capital account, it's much less attractive than dollars and other assets. Plus, they don't have those big network effects that we built up before. They haven't convinced a lot of oil producers to sell in yuan, and they're not a major funding currency. But really, it's that closed capital account that has made them slower to catch on compared to, say, the euro, for example. And one of the challenges. So now that, say, Russia's reserves are frozen. Basically, it kind of shows one of the downsides of the existing system. If you're a country, now you have to kind of question your reserve practices, right? The Wall Street Journal ran a piece called "If Russian Reserves Aren't Really Money, the World's In for a Shock." And so in some ways, that kind of mimics the closed capital account. Now, Russia's been preparing for this, and so they have a lot of self-custodied gold. They also have some yuan-denominated assets. But this war has been very expensive for them. It's cost them hundreds of billions of dollar-euro equivalents in terms of frozen reserves. And so over time, if we start to see more of a diversification of reserves or less global willingness to hold treasuries and dollar-based assets as reserves, there's a couple of things you can see. So one of the, we always think that a lot of people kind of characterize it as though having the global reserve currency is a good thing. And for a lot of entities, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? So there are a lot of entities in the country for which it is a good thing. And then there's other entities in the country for that it's not a good thing. And so one of the things I focused on in my research is that the U.S. having global reserve currency status, what it essentially does is it adds an extra monetary premium to our currency compared to other currencies. And that sounds like a good thing. But it also makes your exports less competitive. Because in addition to your revenue being denominated in dollars, your expenses are denominated in dollars, right? So your wages, your taxes, your various expenses are denominated in dollars, and so that's part of the reason why the United States has run a structural trade deficit. Basically, there's so much demand for dollars that we have to get dollars out into the world, and we do that through our structural trade deficits. So our import power is stronger, and our export competitiveness is weakened. Except for the most high margin industries like software, healthcare, finance, things like that. And so for the everyday worker, if we start to see a diversification of global reserves, they shouldn't see a lot of change to them. They'd see both upsides and downsides. So their importing power could weaken, but you could see the benefit of reshoring and more export competitiveness that can benefit blue collar jobs and different types of manufacturing jobs, kind of real world jobs. Now, in the current system, most of the benefits accrue towards the upper middle classes and the upper classes. And so, if you work in, say, a service-oriented sector like healthcare, government, technology, you're getting most of the upsides of the current system, and you're not really getting a lot of the downsides. And so, for them, that can be destabilizing. You can essentially have less import power and more inflation overall. And so, one of the kind of the models we can look at is how UK lost their reserve status over time, in the kind of the first half of the 20th century. And it wasn't one specific event. There were a number of events that chipped away at it as a rising power came and kind of usurped them over time. And they had a currency crisis, they had an inflationary period, just like other countries did. And so for them, it wasn't necessarily disastrous, but it was this kind of loss of global prestige, global power. And overall, I would say it impacted policymakers more than it impacted the everyday citizen in the UK, right? So the UK lost global influence, but they still had a reasonable standard of life compared to other developed countries. And so I think the United States can go through a similar period where, a lot of what we look like right now is the UK in the early 20th century, I would say.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, so do you see the Bitcoin being a threat to the US dollar as the reserve currency or an alery?
So I think it depends how much they use it. I think right now, in the very current snapshot, it's too small still, despite the fact that it's grown considerably. I mean, there's $13 trillion in US denominated foreign debt in the world. There's something like over $7 trillion in official reserves denominated in treasuries, plus more in terms of bank accounts and other things like that. And so you're comparing that to an asset that is currently worth less than 1 trillion and is more volatile. And so at the current time, we can understand why they've been slow to look at it, because when it was only worth tens of billions and then hundreds of billions, it's still not a huge contender compared to the dollar.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where do you start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.